things in the gaming news world I want to talk about this week. The first revolves all around the conversation and the news around Valve's Steam machine. Most importantly, how much it's going to cost and who exactly is it for. A lot of this was kicked off as soon as the thing was announced. You know, Valve's console, PC, whatever you want to call it. People even argue about that, but like Valve's new set-top box device. Since it was announced, people have been asking these questions, but now over the past week, or at least since the last news video I did last Wednesday, the big talk has been around price, specifically with Linus Tech Tips talking about his experience speaking to Valve and suggesting console pricing and them not really kind of going along with that, leading to a lot of people think this is not going to be a $400, $500 box, but possibly a bit more. Couple that with then an interview that the Friends Per Second podcast did with two people that work at Valve. This is the quote that a lot of people have been talking about.
I think that if you build a PC from parts and get to basically the same level of performance, that's the general price window that we aim to be at. Ideally, we'd be pretty competitive with that and have a pretty good deal, but we're working on refining that as we speak.
Yes, I am quoting my own podcast. Check out the Friends Per Second podcast I do with Skill Up and Lucy James if you haven't checked it out already. It was a really good episode overall. I'm biased, but I think the thing with this specifically, with him saying that that's something they're still working out, obviously we know the device isn't coming until 2026, but also RAM prices have been like all over the place, so it's hard to pin down cost for these things due to fluctuations. But in that interview, Pierre-Loup also said that they're not going to like subsidize this device, where it's not going to be like, yes, it costs, or like the parts or manufacturing or whatever is like $600, but they're going to try and sell it for $300 or $400. It seems like they're just going to put this thing together, try and get the best price for it and sell it, leading to a lot of speculation. I've seen everything from estimates from like hardcore Valve hardware people, like, you know, Moore's Law is Dead, Fox, Deck Ready, talking about roughly a $500 device, upwards to estimates I've seen IGN say something more like $700. So either way, the range of $500 to $700 has caused a lot of conversation, with people saying, well, why wouldn't you just build a PC? Or console people are just happy with their consoles, which at this point consoles are gonna like $500 depending on what you buy. I think ultimately Valve's approach with this isn't to take over the world. I think it's like they're not treating it like a PS4 or a PS5 or something like that, where Sony takes a little bit of a hit on the hardware cost, but they're selling them, they're getting a bunch of people in their ecosystem, and they're also making and producing and selling games, right? Like, yes, Valve has that incentive to get more people on their Steam storefront, but I think here, they're just a weird company, for lack of a better word. Like, they kind of just do what they want. They're kind of like, even the way they're organized, they do things very differently. And I think, I'm not just saying that like in terms of vibes, but I'm also looking at how they approached the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck did very well. We don't know exact sales numbers, but there's a good amount of people that are using them. But I say that like, obviously it didn't sell as much as consoles or any other handheld device like a Nintendo Switch too, but it did enough to continuously be in mainstream conversation, have its own community built around it, but also influence the market. Steam Deck wasn't the first handheld PC gaming device by any means, but you did notice more and more companies take it seriously from a hardware manufacturing standpoint. So when I look at the Steam machine, I don't feel like they're trying to like, muscle out regular old school PC gaming and building or anything like that. And they're also not really competing with consoles. It feels like, to me, they're just going on feeling and trying to make something that makes sense. And that comes to the whole thing with who is the Steam machine for? And with price, there's a lot of factors to that, right? You can argue, I think there's a lot of people, right, for this. And I don't think it's necessarily as clean as saying, well, they're trying to get people away from PlayStation or Xbox and move on to Steam. I don't think that's really the case. I think it's going to be more for, number one, enthusiasts, existing PC gamers. So there's a lot. I think one of the things that isn't mentioned enough are people who own Steam Decks that got excited, got caught up in that whole thing and love the device, but don't own a PC or have any desire to research and build a PC or buy a pre-built PC for over $1,000. Hey, now before I keep yapping, let's talk about the sponsor of this video. It's Vessi. If you're new around here, you should know that I have been rocking these on my feet for a long time. Essentially, Vessi provides comfortable, dependable footwear that's 100% waterproof. But they don't feel like waterproof shoes, right? They're comfortable and they keep your feet cool in the summer, warm in the winter, but not soaking wet. And this time of year, that is perfect, right? Whether you're running around for last minute holiday shopping, or you're picking up some extra shifts, or doing whatever, going for a walk in the woods. Either way, the weather is going to be absolutely unpredictable. And the fact that you can step in anything and go anywhere is incredibly powerful. You're not worried about your shoes because they can take rain, sleet, snow, mud, and just keep on going. They have all different shapes, colors, varieties, and sizes for every person in every situation, but lately I've been rocking the Stormburst. They come in low and high tops. These are the high tops. I just like the really grippy, thick sole for adventuring, going on hikes, but also just incredibly stretchy and comfortable at the same time. But with whatever pair you choose, you're set because Vessi offers a 1-year warranty on all shoes, plus worry-free 30-day returns and exchanges. Plus, this time of year, they make great gifts, and with the whole Black Friday, Cyber Monday thing, you're gonna see deals everywhere. But for Vessi, this is a good opportunity. If you've been thinking for a while, now is the chance. All you gotta do is head to vessi.com or click the link in the description down below. When you're there, you're gonna get 25% off site-wide. Plus, select styles up to 55% off while supplies last. This is a super rare deal. So again, vessi.com or click the link in the description down below to get 25% off site-wide with select styles up to 55% off while it lasts. Check it out. Big thanks to Vessi for sponsoring this video. Now, what was I saying? I think there are some people that would like to have what they're playing on their little handheld Steam Deck on the TV. They might not necessarily be begging for like the most ray traced butt ripping 4K graphics, but just a place where they play their indies, or a place where they play the few games that are PC based where they normally game on something else. Also, if that is the case, they clearly have to have some expendable income depending on the price. But also, I think there is, and I said this on the podcast too, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I think there is a group of people out there that are PC gamers. They play PC gaming at their desk. They may have some expendable income, and sometimes they want to play something on the couch, and maybe their streaming quality isn't good, or they just don't want to build another PC, but they want to access their PC games on TV. Obviously, there's plenty of other ways that they can do that, but this is a simple plug and play option, less thought, less input required. And I think that's a big thing. You have people like me coming up with like the perfect build, like I'm going to build a new machine just for my TV, or I'm going to have a streaming process, or I'm going to have Steam Link, or I'm going to run an HDMI cable in my attic, right? This is just, well, you have Steam on your computer, you love your computer, but sometimes you want to play on the couch. Plop down this little square box. And also, I think there is another market there where there are people that want to play these types of games, but they don't necessarily want to stream them, because in some corners of the world, some markets, cloud streaming over Wi-Fi, whatever, isn't always the best option. For some people, it's not feasible. So a set device running actual physical real hardware, broadcasting it to the screen, could be desirable. So I think a lot of the conversation is just around, like, with mainstream gaming is very much like, oh my God, is this going to change everything? This is going to be Valve's next big thing. I think it is potentially huge. I think it is really cool. I think it is an interesting device. I also think it's fair to acknowledge it's not for everyone. And I think it's not trying to steal people away from Sony or Nintendo Switch. I do think it is a bit of a play for SteamOS as an operating system. With SteamOS becoming more and more of a serious thing, I think it's smart for Valve to put out what is essentially their own little flagship device representing that OS experience. And people have asked me too, like, am I the target demo? Am I someone who likes or will buy a Steam machine day one? Well, aside from my job, and aside from the fact that I'm also like an early adopter hardware goblin, where I like devices and I will do it to the detriment of myself and my credit card, ultimately, I am what would be considered a power user. I want to be running the craziest hardware, getting the best visuals I possibly can squeeze out of something, but not everybody's like that. And I've seen lots of comments and have lots of conversations with people online and offline about people that are absolutely fine and happy with the specs of the Steam machine. So when people say, like, who is this for? I think there's plenty of clear answers. I think they're just a little bit more nuanced and not as sexy as just like Valve's trying to take on the consoles. But that's just me. I could be completely wrong, completely off base, because again, like, the biggest thing is, like, Valve is an interesting company. They do things differently, mostly in ways that I personally enjoy. I like their approach, but we're gonna have to wait and see how this goes actually down. 2026 at some point, we don't know when. We also asked them on the podcast at face value if it was gonna launch with some sort of new Valve game or Half-Life 3. They pretty much denied everything, but you never know. Crazier things have happened. The other bit of news I wanted to talk about this week, the other news story I wanted to dive into is Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Everybody's been shitting on Call of Duty for like the last week. And it's because of a variety of reasons, the campaign being really not that great. People just kind of being burnt out on Call of Duty or otherwise having their time occupied by things like Battlefield 6 or Arc Raiders, right? But there's that whole conversation, but I only really wanted to bring it up today. The only part that really interested me here is some data or some history, so to speak. Analyst Matt Piscatella from Circana, who's been quoted many times in terms of like citing game sales and revenue and history and stuff like that, had this interesting bit that was picked up by GameSpot. This is kind of some fun history. So apparently Call of Duty hasn't been outsold by another shooter in the United States since 2006. Quote, the last shooter game to outsell a Call of Duty title in the US over a full year was Gears of War in 2006. Now I am going to completely like age myself here, take a little trip down memory lane, but 2006 was Call of Duty 3. Call of Duty 3 was a Treyarch developed one, and it just was not as thrilling, I think, out the gate as Call of Duty 2. It had the momentum, but I think Gears of War was such a cultural movement in gaming at the time. It launched the hype before it, and then the actual release and the power of the 360 at the time meant it kind of outshined the competition. Call of Duty 3 kind of felt a little bit like an offshoot because it was the early days of the Infinity Ward back and forth thing. So this wasn't an Infinity Ward one, and it felt kind of off. I actually liked Call of Duty 3 though. Introduced some like crappy vehicles, but also some downright shockingly detailed environments, some really cool moments, a lot of quick time events. Like you get in like a fist fight with a Nazi and you take out a Hitler Youth knife and try and stab you, and you have to mash square to punch him in the face. Like it had a lot of crazy stuff like that, which was cool. But yeah, I just thought that was like an interesting point. And also the last that was a shooter game, Gears of War, but the last first person shooter to beat Call of Duty was Star Wars Battlefront, the original Star Wars Battlefront 2 in 2005, which beat out Call of Duty 2, which is crazy to think about. But I think at the time, Call of Duty just didn't quite have the powerful legs that something the Star Wars brand did. And with Battlefront 2, that was following up the hot success of the original Battlefront. You had to be there. Like it was awesome. Plus too, I think a lot of people were buying Call of Duty 2 on Xbox 360 like when Xbox 360 dropped, while a lot of people were on last gen hopping into Battlefront 2. I knew plenty of people that were doing that. Call of Duty 2, just you had to be there. Incredible. I know now when you look at it, it doesn't look like much, but experiencing that, just raw, visceral, incredible game. But that's where I come from. Like I am not the new Call of Duty fan, like which is a mainstream thing. Call of Duty is often played by people who go outside or have other hobbies. But even back then, playing Call of Duty 2, that shit was still for like nerds. And it was great. What a time to be alive. Look, with the whole thing with Black Ops 7, we don't know necessarily how Black Ops 7 is really going to shake out, like whether or not it's going to be beat in sales by Battlefield 6. Because look, all the online hate for Black Ops 7, it's still a massive cultural juggernaut. I think it can be waning. It can definitely be losing some steam. But mainstream audiences, there are still plenty of guys out there, plenty of bros that just go out every year and buy the next Call of Duty. And the future isn't clear because we still have the holidays coming up when a lot of people get these games. So there's a lot of opportunity for things to happen. But I just thought that factoid was kind of interesting. Along with that, the quote I wanted to grab the most, and I think something that's kind of been lost in this whole conversation, where a lot of it's just been like shit on Call of Duty, and rightfully so. But the quote from Matt Piscatella is, this part of the market hasn't been this competitive in 20 years. He also referred to the market being more dynamic and, quote, like subscription services and Fortnite games and live service things, that sales don't tell the whole story. But again, that thing for me, man, this part of the market hasn't been this competitive in 20 years. I think that's good. I think competition is good. And I think this might sound crazy to some people, but I think it's good specifically for Call of Duty, which you could argue Black Ops 7 is them kind of resting on their laurels, right? Or the machine has gotten so big, the yearly churn with 1 million development studios all cracking at these games. It's gone far enough. And now they may be at the point where they're going to have to really pivot and try something different. find a way to really capture audiences again, get people going crazy, get people lining up around the block for the midnight launch at Best Buy or GameSpot. Like, obviously, like physical games, that doesn't happen anymore, but that feeling, you know, the hype for it. Even the people who were excited about Black Ops 7, like if you just look at online circles, that kind of conversation paled in comparison to the excitement, the speculation around Battlefield 6 and then Arc Raiders and then the launch of those games. So look, if whatever we're talking about here, even if Call of Duty Black Ops 7 still breaks records and is top of the sales charts every year, like every Call of Duty, at least things are biting at their heels and making things competitive. And hopefully that competition drives them to try something different. That doesn't always happen in this world. I don't think it's as clean cut as always just like competition makes things better. But hopefully in Call of Duty's case, it can encourage them to check their shit, so to speak. We'll know later in December how sales are really shaking out. Obviously, you can look at Steam and player accounts and stuff like that, but like I want the hardcore real sales and the charts and stuff like that, but whatever, who cares? I just think it's interesting from like a Call of Duty standpoint in terms of like cultural significance and them changing. But let me know what you think, because I'm just yapping, man. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm talking about stuff I love. If you get that, clicking a like button helps me. But let me know what you think about Black Ops and this whole situation. You know, are you into Black Ops 7? Did you pick it up? Are you that yearly mark? Or are you like me, where you're just reminiscing about Call of Duty 2 from 2005 and just kind of just like leaning on the glory days? Let's also talk about Steam Machine's price. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation around there. Are you thinking $499? Are you thinking $700? $800? I mean, like, look at the specs. Let's talk about this stuff. I'd love to hear from you guys. Hit me up down there in the comments. And of course, if you want to yell at me more directly, you can find me on all the social medias, Jake Baldino. I'll link those in the description down below. I tend to lurk on Instagram the most, but hey, hit me up anywhere. I'm online. Too much, but that's all I got for you today. Thanks for hearing me out. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.